She had spent nearly 3 decades in the classroom, her voice guiding students through literature, history, and the lessons of life. To her colleagues, she was the steady figure who never faltered, the dependable teacher whose chalk-dusted hands carried knowledge from one generation to the next. Yet behind the warmth of her smile and the patience in her eyes, there lived a quiet fatigue. Each morning as she straightened the rows of desks and adjusted the stack of papers on her desk, she felt a question pressing heavier against her heart. Was this all there was left for her? She was 50 years old, and though the years had gifted her wisdom, they also left her with the weight of repetition. The rhythm of teaching, once a symphony that gave her purpose, had become a tune she could no longer hear. Every assignment graded, every lesson repeated, carried a whisper of something missing, like a melody cut short before reaching its chorus. Her friends often praised her for her devotion. Parents thanked her for shaping their children's futures. And still, when she returned home in the evenings to her quiet apartment, she felt as though she was fading, living a life that was somehow too small for the fire that still flickered inside her. She longed for something more, though she couldn't name it aloud. She felt both the comfort of her stability and the ache of her unspoken desires. The truth was, she had dreams she had never dared to follow. As a younger woman, she once imagined working in the world of design, creating things that breathed life into spaces and reflected the beauty she saw around her. But she set those dreams aside, choosing the safe path of teaching when life demanded security. Now, those forgotten dreams returned in flashes, haunting her like unopened letters waiting on a dusty shelf. At 50, the idea of starting over felt impossible. Society whispered that her best years had already passed. That change belonged to the young, yet her heart resisted, aching for one more chance, one more leap into the unknown. She wondered if it was selfish to want more, or foolish to leave behind a career that defined her. Every evening she sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker against the dark sky. The streets below buzzed with the energy of people chasing dreams, and she felt like a quiet observer on the sidelines of her own life. That was when the thought, fragile and daring, began to grow inside her. What if it wasn't too late? Change did not arrive like thunder. It came as a familiar face at a quiet corner table. A former colleague waved her over, the one who had left the classroom years earlier to begin again somewhere unknown. The cafe smelled of cinnamon and rain. They talked about ordinary things at first, the weather, the school, the small rhythms of a hallway bell. Then the conversation turned, gentle as a tide, toward the life that waits when one gathers the courage to step off the shore. Her colleague did not sell miracles. She spoke instead of slow beginnings, of nights spent learning new tools, of doubt that tugged like a stubborn thread. She described the first months as a map without landmarks, but also the warmth that returned to her hands when she started shaping work that reflected the person she had become. The words settled in, not as instructions, but as proof that reinvention could be real, imperfect, and still beautiful. Walking home, she felt 2 currents pulling at her. One offered safety, a shoreline she knew by heart. The other was a dark river, promising depth and danger, and maybe something luminous in its center. She opened a blank spreadsheet on her laptop and tried to give fear a budget line. Rent, savings, severance, unknowns. The unknowns multiplied like shadows at dusk. She closed the file and pressed her palms to her eyes until tiny constellations flashed in the dark. At school the next day, a senior left a thank you note on her desk, written on paper soft as petals. "You helped me believe I could try again." The words warmed her, then pressed on a bruise she had not named. She had given so many young people permission to dare, while denying it to herself. An email arrived from a community center looking for volunteers to help with a small interior refresh. The subject line felt like a knock at her door. She met her colleague again that weekend. Together they walked through the neighborhood, pausing at storefronts with handmade signs, color palettes whispering welcome. The colleague suggested a simple challenge: one class at the community college in the evening, no declarations, no announcements, just one small step to test whether the spark she remembered could hold a steady flame. She enrolled that night, heart tapping like a hesitant drummer. The first class left her trembling. She fumbled with software shortcuts and felt behind by a decade. Younger students moved fast, confident as birds in wind. Still, there were moments when time widened and she lost herself in shapes and light, in the way a room could soften when lines spoke to each other. She went home both exhausted and alert. the good kind of tired that follows learning. Whispers began at school when she adjusted her schedule. A colleague teased, a relative warned about benefits and pensions. The principal asked careful questions that felt like fences. She smiled, nodded, and went back to grading essays under a desk lamp. Late that night, she sketched ideas for the community center project on scrap paper, the page filling with possibilities. It looked like the inside of a door, half open, waiting for a hand to push. The morning she resigned, the air felt heavier than usual, as if the world itself hesitated to watch her decision unfold. She walked into the principal's office, carrying nothing but a folded letter and the quiet resolve she had pieced together night by night. Her voice wavered, but her heart did not. When she left the room, her hands trembled. Yet beneath the trembling there was relief, like a bird startled into flight, but finally moving toward the sky. The weeks that followed were not easy. For the first time in 30 years, she had no bell schedule to guide her, no classroom to prepare. She traded stability for uncertainty, and the silence of her apartment was sharper without the daily chatter of students. Some nights she questioned her choice, whispering to herself that maybe she had made a mistake, that maybe she was too old to begin again. But then she would return to her sketches, to the small projects she had started, and feel her chest loosen as the lines and colors reminded her of the life she had always wanted to touch. The community center project became her first true test. It was not grand or widely recognized, but it was hers. She spent evenings painting walls, rearranging furniture, and selecting details that made the space breathe. Volunteers worked alongside her, watching her vision take shape. And when the final reveal came, she saw the children's eyes widen as they stepped into a place that felt alive. In that moment, she understood that she had not abandoned teaching, she had transformed it. She was still shaping futures, only now through spaces that nurtured and inspired. Her path did not unfold without obstacles. Some clients doubted her because of her age. Technology demanded more than patience, and she often felt clumsy in a world that seemed built for the young. But each setback became a lesson. Each small success a stone in a bridge she was building toward herself. Slowly, she gathered clients, one recommendation leading to another, until her days were filled, not with hesitation but with purpose. By her 52nd birthday, she looked around her new studio, messy sketches, paint samples, digital drafts glowing on her laptop, and realized she had not just changed careers, she had chosen to live. The fatigue that once weighed on her had lifted, replaced by the quiet joy of a woman who listened to the voice she once ignored. She often thought back to the words on that student's thank you note. "You helped me believe I could try again." Now, those words belonged to her as well. At 50, she had rewritten her story, not by erasing the past, but by daring to turn the page. Life often convinces us that certain doors are forever closed, that time decides when our choices end. But her journey reminds us that courage is not bound by age. At 50, she proved that happiness is not about holding on to what is safe, but about trusting the whispers of the heart that call us forward. Perhaps your own unopened chapters still wait for you. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs courage today. And remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories that inspire a brighter tomorrow.